Thanks so much, Jason, for joining us today.
Great to be here,
So,
Tristan.
everybody, Jason is our commercial director at i-Genie.ai. And as we've done with previous iterations of the newsletter, we're going to ask Jason a couple of questions to get to know him a little bit better. So, Jason, kicking off,
Yeah.
our first question, which we ask everybody, um, you chose to live pretty close to Boston. What do you like about Boston? Is there anything which is worth sharing with the audience today?
Well, look, but Boston itself is a great town, right? Um, Funny enough, though, my answer I think would actually be Boston's proximity and where we live in New England. From my house, I'm able to hike Mount Washington, which is one of the most dangerous mountains in the world, which is an amazing ability to have that so close. In addition to 66 or 67 other 4,000-foot peaks. This is all within a couple hours of me, and myself, my family, my friends, we're all very much into hiking, camping, climbing. So being able to have that at your fingertips so close to a major cosmopolitan city like Boston's amazing. I've got world-class skiing, in 3 different states that I can tap into every year. So I don't have to jump on a plane to go do that, which is absolutely amazing. And being able to kayak open water in Maine, Massachusetts, off Rhode Island. I mean, these things are just within an hour or two away from me. Wandering amazing beaches in Cape Cod. I've got endless mountain biking options. Dining, some of the best seafood experiences you'll have anywhere are all around me. And on top of that, I've got Quebec, which is just a small stretch away from me. So being able to have so much variety, I think, is one of the reasons that it's kept us as a family. It's kept us here because when we've looked at other places around the United States and even going back to London, where my wife and I met, to have so much so close, you just don't find many places. So I think my answer to why I love what about Boston is it's not just Boston, it's actually what Boston gives us access to.
Amazing. I think you've definitely sold Boston to me. Hopefully, other people who are listening to this might also follow some of your footsteps and visit some of those amazing places. You
Absolutely
mentioned
should.
you mentioned food very briefly there, Jason. If anybody is coming into town visiting Boston, is there a particular place that you would suggest people to go to eat?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Is there one particular place? I actually would say no, and that's probably a weird answer, but the reality is that there's just so much variety here. There's so many different places. Always get off the map of the traditional places to go see, the big touristy restaurants. Avoid those. But that's we all know if we travel, don't do that. Go look for the hole in the walls. Look for the small little places in the small little towns. That's typically where you find the best eating experiences. I live on the South Shore, which is just south of Boston. And in that area, which leads down into Cape Cod, in that area, you go to the town I live in, Norwell, Hingham, Duxbury, Marshfield. You get these little hole-in-the-wall restaurants, are just amazing. We have an oyster farm in Duxbury. The food, pretty good. The drinking experience in that whole environment, second to none. It is quintessential New England. So I think for me, the advice, if you're going to come here and eat, is hit the North End, great Italian, but just find the hole in the walls, and you won't miss.
Amazing. Well, there we have it, everyone. Some really good recommendations. And I think that's one of the great things about iGenie. We're always sharing different things out of work. So brilliant to hear
Yeah.
your list there, Jason. So before we move into iGenie and more into your sort of professional life, leaving your personal life behind, what's one fun fact that you could leave with our audience today?
Fun fact. I'm a mutt, meaning that I have a lot of different bloodlines or different heritages in my bloodline. And the World Cup is, to me, which is my favorite sport, anyways. The World Cup gives me the opportunity to really explore that with my family because we very much live our heritage. Portuguese and Cape Verdean. Well, here we go. World Cup knockout stage. Both Portugal and Cape Verde unbeknownst to anybody, is actually in the knockout range, which is amazing. Italy, let's not talk about the World Cup with Italy, but my Italian background, my French Canadian roots, English roots. I have all these different elements to our background, and my family and I very much live our heritage. So it just, I don't know. Fun fact is that we go for diversity. You kind of saw that in my first couple answers, too. Just love variety. So if there's a fun fact about me, is that kind of anything goes, and I'm always up for new experiences. And I think that's just in my bloodline. I kind of come to it honestly.
That's brilliant. And I think that really ties nicely into i-Genie because obviously, the whole workforce of i-Genie is very diverse in different parts of the world. And
It
also
is.
getting into more of what we do as a business, all our data sources are also very various. So that's a brilliant answer. Thank you. Okay, shifting gears. So Jason, thank you so much about telling us about a bit about your past, a bit about what you like to do, a little bit about Boston,
Yeah.
which is always awesome. Be great to hear a little bit more about what you do at i-Genie.
So, as you noted earlier with my title, so I really help run the commercial practice here for iGenie. So I have some amazing peers and partners in the revenue part of our organization, but really working with clients to really help really identify where their issues are and where their challenges are with understanding consumers, right? And understanding where do we place our bets? How do we think about our business going forward? How do we want to evolve? And so being able to help unlock that challenge through what iGenie does uniquely, which we'll get into in a second, I'm sure, I think is kind of our primary reason for being here. The reality is our marketplace is completely overwhelmed. What, in any given day, there's 5 to 8,000 marketing technology companies out there. I mean, think about our clients. Think about everyone they have to deal with, all those calls, all those conversations. They desperately want to learn more, but they're also overwhelmed by their day job. And so being able to do something that I know changes the game, and that's always been the hallmark of my career, is always sitting at the intersection of consumer insights and technology, and where can technology effectively, truly effectively help us understand our consumers better so that we can make better decisions. And that's really what I do here. I just do it with iGenie and with Stan and team here in a way that has never been done before, which is exciting and the reason why I'm here.
Amazing. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why everybody comes to i-Genie.
Mhm.
I think being at the forefront, especially in today's world, is super important. So taking a step back, Jason, and
Yeah,
thinking about things more generally, but obviously from an i-Genie angle
sure.
for our audience here, uh, why do you think what we do at i-Genie is important for the insights industry, not just for today, but also for tomorrow?
Okay, I'm going to start with a comment that is kind of easy for everyone to say, and that's part of the problem, right? Is that these things become kind of trite things everyone says. Um, what Stan and team here have created is game changing from the standpoint of it actually fundamentally alters the operating system under which insights for brands works. Okay. Um, so I'm going to use this is the first time I've ever used this analogy, sincerely. So, but I'm going to share it right now because as I was thinking about this, it kind of popped in my head. If you take a faucet and you turn a faucet on, right, and you're going to wash dishes, or you're going to do something with food or whatever, you turn on the water and then you wait for the hot water to get hotter. And you gotta wait, might be 5 seconds, might be 10 seconds, depending on your system. And then once you get hot water, then you're trying to get the right temperature, right? So in a small little microcosm, that's where the insights industry works. We know we need to do something. This is with consumers and their insights. So we go to surveys, we go to tap resources that we have internally, DIY, we might use a third party, whatever it might be. And then we run the research, we turn on the faucet. We finally get some insights, but we're still trying to figure out what the right ones are. And that's really kind of gauging the temperature of the water. So by the time you do all that, you spend a lot of money, you spend a lot of time, you've gotten some insights, but at what cost? And really, how effective is it? What iGenie is, and that's why I say this is the first time I've used the analogy, just think about that faucet always being on at the right temperature, at the right flow, so that you're just constantly dipping into it when you need it. It's always there. And why that's important is because right now, brands are under massive pressure from a budgeting standpoint, from an innovation standpoint, from a positioning their brand standpoint. The generations are different. When we talk about Gen Zers, when we're talking about Alpha now, we look at the old baby boomers, me, the Gen Xers. Like, you look at all these different generations, and they each have a different take on what they're looking for. Insights has always tried to try and keep up with that, but you're always trailing it, and you're always having to ask. By having the water on, the flow always on, we're just watching behavior. We're seeing it in real time. We're seeing it across various different source types, landscapes, if you will. So behaviors are different for each one of those. And then we bring all that together. So that's why I say it's the faucet with the flow always on at the right temperature, at the right level that you need. So that's how we're changing the operating system for insights. That to me is what is really unique. When I caught up with Stan last year, and I learned what he was doing, that was the first thing that resonated with me, was that's the difference here. Because we're all playing catch up. Technology's always doing catch up stuff. This is actually about always being ahead of the game. And that empowers understanding brand and your brand, your competitor's brand, you understanding the digital marketing, digital positioning pieces, our influencers, how we work with them. It dictates trend spotting and how we think about products that we want to create for the marketplace to serve a need, not just create another like whatever product to just push out a new variant so that we can, quote unquote, potentially satisfy our client. We're always working a little bit in the dark there. Where are they going? Where are they going to be 6 months from now, a year from now? That's what we enable. And that's why that faucet always being on and always being accessible is absolutely key. So it's a long answer to the question, but that to me is really why this is so fundamentally different and the reason why I had to be here.
Amazing. And I think that analogy is a really, really great one, and one we should probably use a lot more often. I think you probably answered this, Jason, just with your previous answer here. But I'd love to get the beginning bit, probably, which is obviously what you were doing before i-Genie. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And what made you join. You've obviously covered the what made you join in your last answer.
Yeah.
So just to get a little bit of understanding and background for everybody who's watching in terms of what you've done in your career, what you've seen, and what's led you to this very point.
I laugh because I've ended up with i-Genie because I was really sick and tired of startups. So let me explain that. So in my career, my career started with Campbell Soup Company and with Boston Beer Company, Sam Adams, for those who are familiar with Boston Beer. So back in the day, that's how I started. I love being on the client side, but I always had that question about what was driving all the decisions that I was being forced to convey to the distributors that I was working with, the sales managers, the grocery manager, the frozen food manager. Like, what was it that was informing that? Well, it's insights work, and that was really flowing from marketing. So I made that change. I jumped to the vendor side because I really wanted to understand what was driving and how were these things being arrived to. I worked with some amazing startups, early venture firms. Most namely would be Afanova. For those who know Afanova, amazing company, acquired by Nielsen back in 2015. An amazing run with them. And then I joined a couple of different startups in the insights space, in marketing mix modeling, and a couple other areas. Good companies, but I just kept running into and seeing problems with growing the business. And there were a couple fundamental problems with that. I won't go into all those details right now because that could be a whole nother interview. But what it led me to do was say, you know what, enough trying to work and turn around individual companies on the revenue side. Instead of turning them around individually, let me do fractional and see if I can work with a number of different startups at the same time, because there are fundamental elements to a playbook strategy and set of frameworks that these companies need access to that they're just not getting access to. They don't know how to execute against them, etc. So for 3.5 years, I actually had my own practice along with a partner, Scott Anderson, who I was blessed to work with. And that's what we did. We worked with fractionals. I'm sorry, we worked with clients on a fractional basis. Then I run into my old client, Stan Naughton, at Quirks in New York last year. And we big hug. We like just catching up with each other for a few minutes. He told me what he was doing. I told him what I was doing, and we're like, you know what? Let's see if we can support one another. I was on for about a month on the fractional side, and I'm like, this is game changing. Some of the things I was alluding to before, and he and the CEO Trevor Sumner, who I developed a really good relationship right away with, were like, would you be interested in coming on board full time? And I was like, you know what? I had no intention of closing my part of the business, zero. But hold on, this is a chance to work with Stan and Trevor to build this organization. Yeah. And so I came on the beginning of this year to do that. And no looking back. It has been everything I wanted and hoped for. An extremely well-run company, and a set of solutions that just frankly, like I said, is just changing the game for clients. So yeah, that's the long-winded story of why I'm here.
Fantastic. I think everybody likes a bit of context, especially in insights. So I am going to go to my next question, which is probably going to be quite difficult for you, Jason, because you've given us a fantastic long list of what you love about working at i-Genie.
Yeah.
But if you had to pick one thing about i-Genie, whether it's the people, whether it's the product, probably is going to be a mesh between the two, or anything else for our listeners, what would it be?
Actually, this isn't as hard as you think. I mean, there's a lot of great options that I could go to. But actually, the number one is that this business was actually started by client-side minds. That is unbelievably unusual, right? It's not where it typically happens. Okay, so that's one thing. But now take that to the level of Stan Naughton and Paul Van Gent and their experiences with Coca-Cola and Unilever, which are the two of the probably top 3 or 4 most innovative insights functions that exist in CPG globally. Hands down, most people will tell you that. And here are 2 of the gentlemen that actually innovated and evolved those systems into the world-class platforms they are. Those 2 brains are what started i-Genie. Right there is that's just completely different. It's very unique, and it has empowered a way of thinking about what we're doing, how the products are set up, and how we're servicing the actual needs that our clients have, and a true empathy for what our clients are going through. Why? Because 2 gentlemen who started a company, that was their lives for 30 years each. Like, that's what they've been doing. That to me is just fundamentally different.
And I think that's such a brilliant answer, and it resonates throughout the business. I know our CSPs on an account level also come from the client side. So, I mean, it is definitely part of the DNA of i-Genie.
100%. That's perfectly
Brilliant.
said. That's right.
So we are nearly out of time, Jason. So for anybody who's watching, Jason, if you could leave us with one thing you wish a watcher or anybody else who would be peering into i-Genie, what would you wish they would know that is not ultimately easy to see from the surface?
Is we're not your grandfather's insights firm. I mean, again, this is just being empathetic to what our clients are dealing with. It's overwhelming, the number of resources, the number of capabilities, the technologies, and there's a lot of good stuff, right? There is. But 95% of them are not changing the game. They're trying to find, ways to improve different parts of the mousetrap, to use an old phrase. This is a completely new way of thinking about the mousetrap. And at the same time, it still complements and works alongside the traditional capabilities that companies, insights professionals, marketers, brand leaders are used to using. And I think that ability to bridge that gap is unbelievably unique, which is a term I keep using and throwing out with i-Genie, but it's very unique. It's you just don't see that. And I think that ability for brands to understand that and to figure out how to leverage that, that gives them an ability to rethink really everything they've been taught, everything they've learned, and frankly, the things that they think in the back of their head. The old saying, what keeps you up at night? Some of those things that are kind of always kind of niggling in the back of the head, like, I need to address this. Think about being able to have that faucet always on. Think about how that changes all the different work streams, all the different brands, all the different needs, all the different geographies, all the different local teams that you need to work and support and help be as efficient as humanly possible and as effective as humanly possible. Think how that can change. And I think that's the if I could just evangelize and just have everyone in the world listen in our industry, I think that would be the one message I'd want to get out there for everyone to be aware of. This is fundamentally freeing you up from all those constraints that you've been dealing with for all these decades. This is different. This is unique. So I'd probably end with that.
Brilliant. There you go. A fantastic message to end on. So thank you so much for Jason being here today with us. To everybody who's watching, we will see you next time.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much,
Bye
Tristan.
bye.